All right, Shalom. Let me get straight into this lesson. But the Spirit was on me to go back into this book. The name of the book is that I'm going to be reading from is How White Folks Got So Rich, which, they'll be so called white folks. They true biblical nationality are Edomites. So you have all these things that's going on in this world. It's crazy right now. But a lot of this history is deemed unimportant because they tell you what's important and what's not important. They tell you what to focus on and what not to focus on. The system. They'll put a football game more important than its history, right? Or what LeBron did, and I'm just saying that them the things that people find of importance, important, Salakia, importance rather, right? So let's get into this history right here, and this is how you see these sprawling mega cities, these mega corporations, these sprawling mansions that you see from New York, um, Dallas. I mean, you name every city, all the mansions in California, all this has directly connected to slavery. Everything that you see, the wealth today, like how we was in slavery in Egypt and we made Egypt, we built treasure cities. In Egypt, the same thing happened in America. Most of our people built most of this stuff. They actually invented most of the stuff that you use today. They got no credit for it. And also, they built most of the things that you see today, right? And America was literally built on our backs. And when so-called white America, when we bring these facts out, they don't want to hear it. They call it critical race theory to deflect, right? To no accountability. And they go to show you that you the same devils your ancestors back reincarnated, right? Same devils. Let's get into this. It says sugar to cotton to oil. Whites gotta have it at the very top. It says for 134 years between 1803 and 1937, cotton was America's first Slovakia. Cotton was America's largest export. And this slave-grown staple was the single biggest driver of European expansion. They go back to Edomite expansion. Europeans in Europe is new speak. All right. It says cotton was at the very foundation of American economy and it turbo fueled industrial growth worldwide. Do you hear this? So it just wasn't cotton. It was everything, right? It says indeed cotton was to the world economy in this era what oil is to the present. I bet you didn't know that. It says Western civilization was built on the sweat, blood, and tears of so-called black African men, women, and children. This for you self-righteous Edomites that's so concerned about this child trafficking, but you're not concerned about this. They had little children that they fed to alligators. Did you know that? Right? And we're not black Africans. Black is a byword. That's a social construct. We're Israelites. Hebrew Israelites is our ethnicity. And we're not black Hebrew Israelites. That's a negative connotation when you put black in front of anything. I've done lessons on that. So let's get back into this. It says men, women, and children who planted, cultivated, and picked a valuable crop and then wrapped it in 200 to 500-pound bales. The race-based culture cotton created is at the very root the most of the multiplicity of miseries affecting so-called black people. Right here, it says at the top. Check this out. Salakia. At the top, Jewish traders, that's your Amalekites, the Edomites that call themselves Jewish. They funded all these slave ships and all this shit that you was moving around back then. It says at the top, right here where the little ship, where the ship is at, those words. Jewish traders like the Wayne Wayne Brothers Cotton Company. It says grew wealthy on so-called black slavery. They traded 500,000 bales a year when the United States was producing 10 million bales annually. Do you hear this? It says barges like this one constantly brought slave picked cotton to international markets. There you go. Most of the slave ships was owned by so-called Jewish people, Amalekites, Edomites that you see today. At the top, it says without cotton, slavery in the New World was very likely headed for extinction. It says sugar had driven the European expansion. That's why they got sugar in all these different products. Every product pretty much you see on the market got sugar in it, all right, to cause you to get sick because it's a big commodity, right, that they did in slavery as well. It says in the slave trade into the sugar growing regions of the South America and the Caribbean. So you got our brothers there as well, the Levites, the so-called Haitians, the so-called Cubans, the so-called Jamaicans, Belize, so on and so forth. They don't know who they are either. All right. Let me get back into this. But by the late 18th century, slave revolts and waning market threatened to crash the economy. It says the invention of the cotton gin and most of your inventions that you see today that you use today was created by so-called blacks, Hispanic, and Native Americans. I can do a lesson on that and I can go on for a whole year going into all the inventions of our people. It says a machine that efficiently separates the seeds from the fibers sped up cotton production 50-fold, instantly making it much more profitable and desirable. The miraculous fiber that could be transformed into almost any type of cloth or garment and dyed in any pattern. It could be made into rope, curtains, upholstery, and clothing, woven densely for warmth or loosely for hotter climes. And it could be even be made to mimic fine silks at a fraction of the cost. The whole world clamored to be reclothed in cotton, and that escalating demand put so-called black men and women on the auction block in increasing numbers, just as demand for sugar did generations before. One cannot overstate the value of cotton to white, so-called white world prosperity. Do you hear this? And the correspondingly cotton's direct connection to the destruction of so-called black civilization, Israelites. By 1840s, by 1840, cotton exports were greater than all other exports combined. Do you hear this? And America's 75,000 cotton plantations. Wow. Read that again. It says in America, 75,000 cotton plantations. Do you hear this? That's a staggering number. And that just cotton plantations. That's not count other plantations. Generated 3/4 of the world's cotton supply. And at least 6 out of every 10 so-called Africans worked directly in cotton production. The others were largely engaged in growing food and building houses for use by the cotton cultivating slaves. Do you hear this? The slaves built the White House, where they participated in the building of the White House and other monuments as well. It says construction, roads, bridges, and ports for cotton shipping and transport. Do you hear this? When you devils will say that we never contributed to anything, we built this whole fucking world, right? It says in ports for cotton shipping and transport, intending the homes, families, and cotton masters, cotton traders, and cotton businessmen. Moreover, enslaved so-called Africans, which are Israelites, represented 2/3 of a plantation family total wealth. It says with half of the remainder in the land they worked. A plantation family depended on the very labor of so-called black and enslaved for its total income, protection, and survival. At the top, it says a British economist calculated should any dire calamity befall the land of cotton, 1,000 of our merchant ships would rot idly in dock. Do you hear this? It says 10,000 mills must stop their busy looms. 2 million mouths will starve for lack of food to feed them. France was said to be even more dependent on American cotton than Britain. Check this out. It says the mega wealth of the Rothschild banking family was derived from cotton. The Lehman Brothers, that's going back into Wall Street. All this shit is deep, man. Lehman Brothers. You heard that in the 2008 financial housing crash. The Lehman Brothers, all these J people, right? The Rothschild family, the Rockefellers, the Oppenheimers, right? All J people and Edomites that control the wealth of the world. But this is how it originated. It says in their investment banking house began as cotton traders in Alabama. Cotton was the motive for their development of vast, expanded international web of finance, politics, transportation, and communications, a global network that relied entirely on forced enslavement of a whole race of people. It says, as industrialization spread after slavery, petroleum oil rose in its value to world enterprise, and the geopolitical focus shifted from North Africa and the so-called Middle East, which is Asia. They renamed it Middle East to cause the confusion and control the narrative, where today it remains to be prominent commodity, bringing with it the suffering, misery, havoc long endured by peoples of the America and so-called Africa, and now inflicted upon indigenous people unlucky enough to live on top of black gold. So this is how these devils got all this wealth. You got something called the Fortune 500 company, Salakia. This all tied into the Rothschild, Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan banking system. The whole building of Wall Street was funded off slavery. That's why you got something called the stock market, right? When they used to trade, right, slaves and auction blocks and stuff like that, man. And this is how you got these mega companies, these multi-million dollar, multi-billion dollar corporations. This is how you got the average Edomite, right, with land and acres of land, resources, you know what I'm saying, pension fund, trust funds that they can go into college, they get loans, they can go do things that you can't because of the so-called social construct of being so-called white people, the false social construct. And now the average so-called white person is being oppressed as well, and they try to say they understand what it's like. We've been going through this ever since we came over here, and ever since the so-called Native Americans were here, been oppressed, being discriminated on. That's why you got something called redlining, and I can keep going on and on and on and on and on. And that's why the so-called white man oppress us so much, because they know that we're greater than them. They know this. We're stronger. We're mentally stronger. Uh, so on and so forth. Mentally, more intelligent, more stronger, and that's why they do all this oppression. But a day of reckoning is coming. And the Edomites gonna have to pay for everything that they did plus double. And it scares the shit out the average Edomite. All right. Hopefully this was edifying. Kahala Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak, Kodash. Shalom.